God, it's so nice to be able to actually get back to work on my commentaries, especially given how I've been working on this one on and off for months since around the time Henry, Silver, and TP made their try-op on a co-op list this person made with Tamashi. Don't worry, this one is a solo list, but given how this particular list is pushing in on 8 months old, I had to get my ass in gear and get this comm out. But enough of that. Roll the intro and get this commentary started.
Everyone, this is Tricky, and if you've been following my content for about a year or two, you may have seen this video on another channel before. It's kind of getting close to Halloween, and I just wanted to share this video again, and I'm sure that you guys have noticed my obsession with creepy, ghostly things, so I thought it would fit my channel very, very well. I made this about a year ago, and it was uploaded to another channel, like I said. I worked really, really hard on this, and I just really wanted to make sure that no one would miss it. Plus, some of you who are new to my content, I didn't want you to miss anything either.
Yes, this is a re-upload on her channel of an older video of hers, but the way I see it, she apparently still stands by that list of hers and didn't bother tweaking it, which is why I found it okay to make this commentary on the list. So now that you saw that explanation of hers, I'm skipping the rest of the preface and moving on to the list proper.
At number 20, we have Credilli. To be completely honest, this Pokemon doesn't look like it would be dangerous, but its Pokédex entry definitely goes against that. It ensnares prey with its 8 tentacles. It then melts the prey with a strong acid before feeding. Oh, that's lovely. So it wraps little thingies around you, and then it melts you alive. That's not cool.
I take it you're not all that familiar with Venus flytraps or other real-life carnivorous plants then. I'm just saying, it's really hard to find Credilli's Pokédex entry creepy when there are so many real-life carnivorous plants that feed on various animals in the same way. Also,
I'm just a mean green mother from outer space, and I'm bad.
Outer space?
Mother from outer space, and it looks like you've been had. I'm just a mean green mother from outer space, so get off my back, get out my face, cause I'm mean and green.
I probably just made it impossible for some folks watching to take it seriously now. You're welcome.
But of course, this Pokemon really isn't that big of a threat in the Pokemon world, considering that this is a fossil Pokemon, so I suppose that's a good thing they went extinct.
Kinda hard to call it truly extinct in the Pokemon world when there are apparently enough root fossils around for resurrection machines to keep bringing the evolutionary line back, for trainers to use the Pokemon and or fill up Pokédex pages, and to warn Pokemon professors to give the line their own Pokédex entries.
Moving on to number 19, we have Cubone. I'm pretty sure if anybody has looked up previous Pokédex entries, Cubone has been on there somewhere. And I'm pretty sure that everybody is familiar with its Pokédex entry. It wears the skull of its dead mother on its head. When it becomes lonesome, it is said to cry loudly. That's really, really depressing. Don't get me wrong, that is extremely creepy, but I find it more sad than scary.
Then why is it on this list? You just said it's more depressing than scary. The title of this video is Top 20 Creepiest Pokédex Entries. Given that this is a top 20 list, and the Pokédex has over 700 entries, I'm pretty damn sure you could have come up with something to replace Cubone. You even name drop a couple of other mons later on and even say they're creepy, yet for some reason they aren't on the list while Cubone is. Hint, hint.
And what freaks me out the most is that there's a lot of Cubones, and they're all wearing their dead mother on its head. Why are there so many? Do they kill their mother? I know that Team Rocket killed them in the game. I feel so bad for Cubone. Okay, now I'm sad. Let's move on.
That was just the one Cubone and the one Marowak in Lavender Town though. Also, and this may be somewhat tangential, there's a theory regarding the Pokédex that I'm surprised none of these Poketubers seem to bring up in these Pokédex list videos. I'm gonna play the clip from the try-up that I participated in with Master TP10 and Xeric on Chaos Key's top 5 dark and creepy things in Pokemon. You know, that encyclopedia of Pokemon entries that many fans have reason to believe are written in-game by kids? Given how some Pokemon's entries may not be consistent from game to game, and many of them contain information and have absolutely nothing to back them up in game, and how these entries don't show up until after the Pokemon trainers capture or acquire said Pokemon, is this theory really that far-fetched?
Moving on to number 18, we have Victreebel. In the Pokemon show, this Pokemon is extremely hilarious. In my opinion, this Pokemon has always freaked me out, but its dex entry does not sound pleasant at all. This horrifying plant Pokemon attracts prey with aromatic honey, then melts them in its mouth. I honestly cannot imagine being melted alive. That is the most unfortunate death ever.
Yeah, imagine all those kids playing Super Metroid who beat Crocomire and saw the skin melting off his bones. Think of the children!
Can you imagine being stuck head first in its mouth and just being melted? No.
First Cradily and now this. The whole Victreebel evolutionary line is based on the pitcher plant. You know the pitcher plant's claim to fame? It's carnivorous. One more thing.
I'm just a mean green mother from outer space, and I'm bang. Outer space? From outer space, and it looks like you've been had. I'm just a mean green mother from outer space, so get off my back, get out my face, cause I'm mean and green.
Moving on to number 17, we have Gothitelle. I didn't expect this Pokemon to have a creepy Pokédex entry, but its Pokédex entry is both depressing and extremely creepy. They can see trainers' lifespans. When it learns its trainer's lifespan, it cries in sadness. This is like some Death Note Shinigami crap going on right here.
So Gothitelle has the Shinigami eyes then? It had to give up half its own lifespan to do that, so chances are it's gonna die before its trainer,
To a lot of people, death is absolutely terrifying. And could you even imagine being around somebody that you love and seeing their lifespan? When you first think about it, it doesn't really sound that bad, but if you actually put yourself in those shoes and to imagine when somebody is actually going to die, you would constantly just be waiting for it. That is torturous, in my opinion.
She brings up a good point about how if you saw someone's lifespan, you'd just be waiting for them to die, but she's missing a few things. 1. Many trainers probably have long and healthy lifespans, meaning that, my stupid joke about the Shinigami eyes aside, the Gothitelle will probably die before the trainer does. 2. She doesn't even bring up the possibility of the trainer's expected death being untimely, premature, and possibly happening when the trainer is very young. That actually makes it debatably creepier than she lets on. With something like that in mind, you could argue that Gothitelle's dex entry should be higher on the list.
Moving on to number 16, we have Spiritomb. I know this is random, but I honestly wish that its shiny form was its regular form because its shiny form is beautiful.
6 seconds of padding in the form of a tangent not even remotely related to its dex entry. In a video in which the entries are just 31.5 seconds long on average, and several of the entries are even shorter than that. GG.
But anyway, this Pokemon has a very interesting Pokédex entry. It was formed by combining 108 spirits. It was bound to a fissure in an old keystone as punishment for misdeeds 500 years ago. I actually want to know what this thing did, but it's honestly crazy to think about that this Pokemon is actually 108 evil spirits combined. But the creepiest thing to me is that somebody actually fused them together. Someone had to have done that. And that sounds like some freaky ritual stuff. So, what the freaking crap, dude?
The creepy factor is dulled if you know why 108 is a significant number in Japan and other Far East countries. E.g., 108 is the number of temptations a person must face before reaching nirvana in Buddhism, and is also the number of beads on a Buddhist rosary, and a bell is rung 108 times to signify the new year in Japan, just to name a few examples. This is yet another example of why research can only serve to help these types of lists. Also, refer back to my statement about the theory regarding what exactly Pokédex entries are. There is absolutely nothing to back up Spiritomb's entry in-game, nor to back up the odd keystone being what it is, other than it being connected to Spiritomb, and it being the item that summons Spiritomb to battle you in certain games so you can capture it. Even so, there's nothing in-game that states that the odd keystone that the player character gets is 500 years old, or that the Spiritomb you battle is also 500 years old, so the Pokédex entry could just be referencing a Pokemon World fairy tale for all we know.
Taking our number 15 spot is Parasect. This Pokemon looks so happy, but it's really not. The bug host is drained of energy by the mushrooms on its back. They appear to do all the thinking. If any of you guys are familiar with me, you guys know how I feel about Parasect. I've spoken about Parasect before. This Pokemon is basically a zombie. I like to compare it with the game The Last of Us because their zombie outbreak was due to an evil fungus thing. Parasect is the Pokemon equivalent to that.
So you're basically saying that Parasect is a zombie bug. It's hard to see it as creepy when 1, the zombie bug does not want to eat your brains unlike zombies seen in other franchises, and 2, the zombie bug can be taken out in one hit by an ember or a peck.
Moving on to number 14, we have Hypno. I'm sure most of you were expecting Hypno to be on here somewhere. This Pokemon is basically the Predator Pokemon, due to its creepypasta stories.
Creepypasta stories that much of the Pokemon fandom regard as fucking jokes nowadays.
In its Pokédex entry, this Pokemon is feared by a lot of people. It carries a pendulum-like device. There is once an incident in which it took away a child it hypnotized. Why would you do that? Why? Moving on to...
Wait, that's it? You devoted only 25 seconds to this entry, and the only thing you brought up to back up its Dex entry were the fucking creepypastas written about it, i.e. nothing in-game. Given how little time you devoted to it, you could have easily replaced it with something else and devoted more time to that replacement. Hint, hint.
Number 13, we have Gourgeist. I've never really been a fan of this Pokemon, and I really don't even like its Pokédex entry because I felt the need to insert the word prey 3 times in this one. Wow.
Jeez, it's like the Pokemon series is inspired by real-life nature and trying to show that wild Pokemon can have predator-prey relationships.
It stabs people with its mouth, and then it drains the body fluids of its prey. That is messed up. Of course, Gourgeist is based off of a mermaid. It will fool people with its beauty, even though I don't think it's pretty at all. And then it will kill them. How charming.
Its method of tricking and feeding on prey by draining its bodily fluids can be seen as creepy, but at least it doesn't do what the Candiru supposedly does and swim up its prey's genitals and feed on them from the inside out. Be thankful for Pokemon's E rating, everybody.
Taking our number 12 spot is Cofagrigus. Everything about this Pokemon is creepy. It has been said that they swallow those who get too close and turn them into mummies.
It has been said. It has been said. As in, there is nothing to back this up in universe as fact. Actually, I'm gonna wait to get back to this.
Do you know the process of becoming a mummy? Mummification requires them to take out all your internal organs, pull out your brains, and all kinds of really bad things. And to think that this Pokemon would do this to you while you're alive.
1. Its ability of Mummy, which Yamask also has by the way, is nothing like that and simply functions like Pass It On, or more graphically, like a virus that spreads through physical contact with others. 2. You are aware that actual mummification requires the body to already be a corpse, as in actually be dead, right?
To be juiced by this Pokemon does not sound nice in the slightest. Plus, if you're claustrophobic, that would be terrible to be stuck in there.
How can it directly mummify a body that's still living? Unless you think it actually kills the target prior to real mummification, in which case that raises the question of why, with that sort of alleged implication in Cofagrigus' Dex entry, the entry falls at only number 12 on your list. I'd like to refer back to what I said about how there's nothing to back up its Dex entry in universe as fact. Not only is that completely unscientific, making it an antithesis to what the Pokédex is supposed to stand for, but it makes me completely unable to take the Dex entry seriously. Also, it's hard to say its Dex entry is creepy when its entry could be a complete lie and we could be making an entire species of harmless spirits look bad.
Moving on to number 11, we have Honedge. If anyone dares to grab its hilt, it wraps a blue cloth around that person's arm and drains that person's life energy completely. This thing doesn't even give you a chance. If you grab it, it's gonna kill you. That is really unfortunate. Moving on to...
Whoa. A 16-second entry on the list, done just like that. Refer back to what I said about how short Hypno's entry was and how that could have been replaced with something else, since that's even more apt here. Anyway, I'll give credit and say that the idea of anyone grabbing Honedge by its hilt being completely drained of their life energy is creepy. But 1, if you're that paranoid, that's why you simply don't grab it by the hilt, you idiot, just pat it on the sheath. 2, if Honedge really does have that power, I'm sure Honedge can control it and choose its victims, so I don't think it's indiscriminate.
Number 10, we have Shedinja. You really wouldn't expect something that had a halo to be completely dangerous.
She doesn't know much about angels and other stories of myths, does she?
Shedinja is a discarded bug shell that came back to life. If you peer into the crack on its back, it will steal your soul. I don't know if it destroys your soul, or it eats it, or your soul gets trapped in its shell for all eternity. Obviously, all 3 are bad, but as long as you don't look in there, I'm sure you'll be fine. But I'm too curious, so I'll probably die.
First of all, refer back to the hearsay and lack of evidence I brought up with Cofagrigus' entry. Second of all, if Shedinja's entry was true, then every single trainer who used the Shedinja in-universe would have been screwed. But they all managed to make it through their journeys just fine, so I think it's safe to say that its entry is a lie.
At number 9, we have Banette. They are said to live in garbage dumps and wander around in search of the children that threw them away.
According to Dex entries from different games that you didn't bring up. And do you really think that many kids threw that many dolls away and that many dolls became a single species of ghost-type Pokemon in universe? I know, there's also Shuppet, and Shuppet could have evolved into Banette, but then that would raise a whole nother question of which came first, the Shuppet or the Banette.
Strong feelings of hatred turn this puppet into a Pokemon. If it opens its mouth, its cursed energy escapes. Well, that's unfortunate because it's always opening its mouth.
Shouldn't that be a hint that at least some of the information in its dex entry is not true then?
Hatred is a very powerful thing, and to have something vengeful chasing after you is not good. And this Pokemon has a Mega Evolution, so not only is it angry, it's very powerful.
You make it sound like Banette is angry all the time. The fact that it's able to Mega Evolve at all means that it's also not true, because the fact that it's able to Mega Evolve means that it's not angry at its trainer.
Taking our number 8 spot is Gourgeist. It enwraps its prey in its hair-like arms. It sings joyfully as it observes the suffering of its prey.
It's hard to say that it's creepy when an entry doesn't even describe what exactly the Gourgeist is doing to its alleged prey. Is it draining its life force like what Honedge allegedly does? Is it sucking out the prey's bodily fluids? Is it trying to kill it with cuddles? Is its singing voice that bad? Seriously, what the fuck is it doing?
What is wrong with this thing? Why would it do that? That is pretty dark in my opinion.
Dark does not equal creepy.
And then if you hear it singing, you get cursed.
So its singing voice really is that bad. Holy shit. I looked up its dex entries on Bulbapedia to see its other entries. X and OR bring up how anyone who hears it singing is cursed. Y and AS bring up the original dex entry Tricky brought up here. But there's another thing I mentioned about Gourgeist while I was looking through info about it. Its Y and AS entries say it likes to sing, yet Gourgeist can't learn sing. I wonder why.
Talk to me, tell me your name. You blow me off like it's all the same. You lit it fierce and I'm taking away like a bomb. Yeah, baby. Talk to me, tell me your sign. You switching sides like a Gemini. You playing games and now you're hitting my heart like a drum. Yeah, baby. She bangs, she bangs. Oh, baby, when she moves, she moves. I go crazy cause she looks like a flower, but she stings like a bee. Like every girl in history. She bangs, she bangs. I'm wasted by the way
Thank you.
I'll let the audience members draw their own conclusions on this one.
So either way, you're screwed. At number 7, we have Glalie. After immobilizing its foe in ice, this Pokemon enjoys eating it in a leisurely fashion. If it completely froze its prey, like if they were dead and then it did it, but it just immobilizes its foe. So it's still alive and it just eats it. Slowly. That is so mean.
I can't help but notice that you first said prey, and then you went back to being consistent with its entry and later said foe. As creepy as its manner of taking down its foe is, that doesn't change the fact that it's doing it to its foe. Not prey, foe. Apparently Glalie only does this to those it feels deserve such punishment. If this indeed is the case, whoever or whatever did this must have done something really bad. Not sure if that makes it more creepy, or fucking metal as fuck, dude.
At least its Megaform has a broken jaw, so I guess that makes it a little better.
Implying a Glalie would have a trainer that would let it Mega Evolve so it could do that. If a trainer had a foe that a Glalie would eat, that would make it creepier, so you probably just made it worse.
Moving on, we have Phantump. At first glance, this ghost Pokemon is extremely adorable, but it's Pokédex entry. It always has to mess that up. According to old tales, these Pokemon are stumps possessed by the spirits of children who died while lost in the forest. These cute little Pokemon are human children who died.
According to old tales that for all we know could have been tales concocted by the Pokemon universe's equivalent of the brothers Grimm or Charles Perrault.
Why? Nintendo, what are you doing? And it makes me wonder how humans are able to transform into Pokemon after they die.
A similar question how dolls are supposedly able to transform into Pokemon. Arguably even more illogical compared to humans supposedly being able to transform into Pokemon, because with the dolls, those are inanimate objects transforming into animate beings.
Moving on to number 5, we have Kabutops. Anything that is capable of chopping you up is not good.
By that logic, I guess the rest of the Honedge line should be on this list as well, because hey, they're swords, right? Or how about Absol, or Gallade, or anything that's capable of using sword stance, like Scyther. Oh wait, Scyther's not on this list, yet it could have made for a good replacement for Cubone.
It slices its prey with its sharp sickles and drinks the body fluids. This Pokemon is pretty hostile as well, so it wouldn't think twice about doing it either.
At least it's finishing off its prey quickly before it gets to feeding on it. Refer back to what I said about the Gourgeist entry and how these Dex entries are actually toning things down from real life.
Again, this is another fossil Pokemon, so it's probably a good thing that they're extinct.
Yet there are apparently enough dome fossils to bring the Kabuto evolutionary line back, give the line their own Pokédex entries, and allow trainers to raise them and use them in battle, so they aren't extinct, are they?
At number 4, we have Dusknoir. According to several Pokédex entries, it has the ability to send people to the underworld, or the spirit world, or any kind of world that you like to associate death with.
Pokemon equivalent of the Grim Reaper who waits for people to die. Number 4 on our list. Everyone's afraid of death, yes, but what ruins the placement for me is this. Remember Cofagrigus placing number 12 on our list? Apparently in her mind, the mon that supposedly kills people is less creepy than the Grim Reaper mon that carries already dead souls to the underworld. I can't compute with your logic, Tricky.
If a Dusknoir does not like you, you're out of luck.
Where did you get this from? The Grim Reaper can kill, but only in certain cultures, typically Western ones. In Eastern cultures, Japan included, the Grim Reaper is a guide that has to wait for the person to die before they can take their soul to the underworld. Given that Game Freak is a Japanese game developer, and they waited until Gen 5 to base their settings on Western settings, it's safe to say that the pre-Gen 5 mods were based more on Eastern archetypes. Try again.
Pretty much the entire evolution line of Dusknoir is pretty messed up. Duskull likes to make children cry, and it would do everything it can in order to hear children crying. That's not nice. And Dusclops is basically emptiness, so if you get too close, it could suck you in forever, and that's not cool either. But the power that Dusknoir has over human life is ridiculous. If Dusknoir and Darkrai join forces, that would be the end of the world.
You mentioned how Dusknoir and Darkrai can supposedly team up to bring about the end of the world. Yet Darkrai is nowhere on your list. Darkrai could have made for another good replacement for Cubone. What the fuck are you doing?
Moving on to number 3, we have Chandelure.
Boy, doesn't this sound familiar?
At number 2 is Yamask, or Yamask, or I don't freaking know. At first glance, this Pokemon looks really cute, but nope. Each of these Pokemon carries a mask that used to be its face when it was human. Sometimes they look at it and cry. Obviously, the one in the picture is a default looking face, but can you imagine being a Yamask and just looking at your face forever? That is terrifying.
Apparently in Trickywi's mind, sad and tragic equals creepy and terrifying, and it makes Yamask take the number 2 spot on her list. That also explains a lot about Cubo making it onto her list at all, and why Scyther and Darkrai didn't find places on her list. Tricky, you really need to start using dictionary.com.
I still want to know why humans become Pokemon in the first place, and of course I could kind of go back with Chandelure's Pokédex entry. Maybe the people that Chandelure forces to wander the world become certain ghost Pokemon.
If that indeed is the case, that actually would make Chandelure's entry a lot more creepy. And not only that, but it would also give evidence to its Pokédex entries, which is something a lot more Dex entries need.
So taking our number 1 spot is Yveltal. When this Pokemon's life comes to an end, it absorbs the life energy of every living thing and turns into a cocoon once more. Obviously in Pokemon X and Y, they couldn't actually have a thing kill off everything. Of course, there was some death in it, but this Pokemon is literally the Pokemon of death. This Pokemon has the ability of killing everything. And that goes for plants too! Plants are a living thing! It has no mercy.
What dampers Yveltal's creepy factor is that its design is a reference to Ragnarok, specifically the race Valgar alongside Xerneas's Yggdrasil and Zygarde's Nidalgar. Ragnarok itself is the cataclysmic event in Norse mythology where all life, gods included, is killed off, allowing the world to be reborn and for all life to begin anew. So not only would it be a cycle that would begin again, but I reiterate that it's from Norse mythology. A myth. Myth. Myth!
It's a good thing that Yveltal sleeps for 1,000 years at a time, otherwise everybody would be dead. But at least we have Xerneas to counter that.
You just broke your own argument by saying that! If Xerneas was around when Yveltal died, it could resurrect all life right after Yveltal killed all life with its death. Hard to say Yveltal is super creepy when, if you died after it died, Xerneas could just as easily bring you and everything else back.
And I think that Yveltal is probably the funniest Pokemon to play with in Pokemon and Me because it's basically Doom Satan Bird.
Yet another reason Yveltal isn't all that creepy.
So powerful. Awkward silence! Yay!
Yay! Video's over! Final thoughts. First off, please learn to understand the differences between creepy, dark, and tragic, because even though they can overlap, there are differences between all three. Second, and more importantly, it could be said that Tricky is taking these dex entries a bit too seriously. I understand that given my rebuttals against different entries on her list, I could be seen as taking the Pokédex in general a bit too seriously when it's just a thing to help players bookmark progress in a video game franchise. Tricky just made a video about it, presumably to encourage discussion about it, when I could be seen as inadvertently shooting that discussion down. On the contrary, I like seeing discussion about it, but there are aspects to the Pokédex that I feel should be fleshed out more, like how the entries should be disputed and debated in-universe. It's a scientific encyclopedia, so it makes sense, right? It'll probably never happen, at least not in the video games, but one can hope. I'll elaborate more on this in a segment of my next solo commentary, so stay tuned for that. Third, and finally, this list, despite having an upload date dating from October of last year, was a re-upload of a video from October 2014. And I don't want to do this, but I feel I have to. To compare this to the co-op list she did with Tomashi that Henry, Silver, and TP made their co-op commentary on a couple months ago, this is the better list in comparison. I know I'm comparing a solo list to a collab list, and the bulk of our top X lists involve fakemon and Pokemon fusions, and those are completely different subjects to the point that those don't even count for comparison here. But when a top X list from 2014 is better than a top X list that was made 5 months ago, you really need to step back and look at what you're doing wrong. That concludes this commentary. Until next time, this is Gale Force saying thank you all for watching, and have a nice day on the internet, everybody.